Hello, welcome to Breaking Bread with Nita Little. My name is Leanne Kowalski. I'm a white woman with blonde hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a black hoodie and I'm sitting in an office. This meeting will be recorded in speaker only view and a recording with closed captions made available on Nita's website afterward. I will be monitoring the chat with questions you might have, either related to the content of this talk or about upcoming events. Today's topic is not what was indicated in the email. Today's topic is scales of being, the wilderness.
Okay.
And our time will be structured as follows. We'll start with a 30-minute talk from Nita. We'll then go on to a roughly 20-minute discussion, and then we'll do about 5 minutes just touching base on some of Nita's upcoming events. And without further ado, Nita Little.
Great. Hi, everyone. So nice to be with you. And I want to talk to you today. What is the title, Leanne?
It is the scales of being, the wilderness.
Right, right. So, as you know from last session, I've been doing a lot of reading of Levin, Michael Levin, who is a evolutionary biologist at Tufts University, sorry, and in Massachusetts. And Levin is really looking a great deal at what it means to be sentient, at what mostly he's looking at intelligence. What's intelligence? And he comes up with the notion that all intelligence is collective intelligence. And so investigating this, since this is what I've been saying for years and years. And why have I been saying it? Because I dance. And so I'm really interested in what it is that dancing, why is it I had these notions so long before Levin, and not, my notions come less from reading and thinking necessarily with others than the thinking with others that happens when we dance. And that thinking with others that is dancing is so amazing. And of course, then there's the thinking with others that took me to go and get a PhD, because what I'd gotten from dancers was so amazing. What I realized because we're together doing stuff. And I really needed to investigate it. And this investigation just keeps getting better and better. I'm so excited by life, a life of moving, a life of being with dancers, a life of reading what other people are bringing to the world through their investigations and their disciplines, and how that speaks to what we as dancers do and can understand, and so that we can all do it even better. So, starting with Levin again, I am definitely appreciating what he's talking about, because thinking about the multiple self, which is what I call it, we're a multiplicity of being, is how in practice I end up speaking about it. Teaching people to recognize and identify and experience the multiple being that we are, and then putting that into practice. It's a practice. It's a practice that shows up in contact improvisation, and it's also a practice that shows up in ensemble improvisation, and becomes the ground of what we work on in the ISSC, the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, as we research what it is communication can be. Communication that happens as multiple beings. Big conversation. Improvisation is really critical to all of this. So I want to talk about the wilderness that we are, that is within the improv, that provokes the improvising self. Okay? And why I think dancers are so brilliant. Because we improvise, because we find ways to speak without just words. We're not speaking at each other, we're actually often speaking within each other. We often find that what it is dancers do is they enter the wilderness of being. And so we're going to talk about that wilderness today. To set it up, I'd like to go back to Levin's point, this Levin's starting point in a paper he wrote called Self-Improvising Memories. And he starts off by looking at Bateson's paradox, which I started our last talk with. And so I'm starting it again from that same point of departure, which is Bateson's paradox points out that if a species fails to change, it will die out. But if it changes, it ceases to exist. The same issue faces all of us if we don't change. Learning and growth is impossible, so we have to change. We can't not change. When I look at that change, I look at the relationship that we have. Where's the relationship in that change, in that making of change, that finding of change? And it's the relationship that excites me. So when I'm inside that relationship, I see that we're in a relationship with what we don't yet know, what we maybe are coming to know, what we are striving to know, what we're reaching toward. And the reaching toward that which is going to provoke change in us is thrilling. As dancers, it means it's bodily felt, a bodily felt reach. Now, we're also at the same time being changed necessarily and feeling the change that is already happening as I'm speaking, even. So you are listening, and the words, the sounds, the shapes, the tones, the fabric of the ideas, the reach of where you're placing them within you, all of that, how they live you, those are the change that you're sensitive to in this moment. And feeling that and understanding that you're not separate from that. And that in fact, the change that is happening right now is happening on the level of the many. It's not the level of the one that is you. Yes, you are changed, but it's also happening on this level of the many. So let's investigate what on earth I'm talking about. Understanding. I think I'm going to begin with Thich Nhat Hanh right this moment and then go back to Levin. Thich Nhat Hanh, who says that where there is a human, well, he doesn't, I don't think he said this specifically. He probably would. Where there's a human, there is no human, nothing there is human. So I look at you and everything within you is not identifiable as human. So, and the same with a piece of paper. You look at a piece of paper where this is definitely Thich Nhat Hanh in Being Peace. Where there is a piece of paper, there is no paper. There are clouds. He says, he starts this one by asking, can you see the cloud that is the piece of paper? Can you see the cloud in the paper? Which is the cloud that allows the rain, that allows the moisture that becomes the tree that grows, the people that take down the tree and the machines that mash it up and all the people that do that. Where there is a piece of paper, there is no paper. There is everything but paper. Everything exists where that is but paper. So where there is us, there is no us. There is everything else but us, but not us. There is no human. And how cool is that? Indeed, if we investigate further, and we start to turn to Levin, the cellular beings that compose you are themselves sentient, meaning they think. He defines sentience as that which is capable of subjectivity, of understanding self, of having experience, not necessarily understanding self, but having experience. So the one who is making decisions, choices, changing, has an experience of that change. The self is a construct, a human construct, and it serves us. We need selves. It works for us, but it's not all we are. And it has constraints that we really need to investigate. Looking further at all of this, it's such a huge subject. I just like, oh my God, such a wonderful subject. But looking at the notion that inside us, decisions are being made by beings that are not us. I stop so that can rest with you, so that you can understand that inside you, there are beings making decisions. And when we want to talk about the wilderness, there's the wilderness right there. There's the closest wilderness, is right there, right at hand. You, in fact, if we define the wilderness, by the way, let's define that, the wilderness as that which you don't have any control over. It's not composed. It's not human. It's not a human construct. It's not human made. You don't have control over it, in that all the little beings within are making decisions themselves. Doesn't mean that you can't influence what happens in the wilderness. You can. But the wilderness that is you, you can fly over it, you know, in an airplane as a thought. But that thought is not a single being having a thought. It's just not. It's many beings composing that which is a thought. How fabulous. All intelligence is collective intelligence. Saying it again so that you can experientially love it. So that intelligence, that wilderness rather, that lives at the scale of the very, very small, also lives at the scale of the very, very large. So understanding that the wilderness is something that we have no control over. It is something that is not a human construct, and yet there it is, right there. When we think we know something, we have the possibility of unknowing it, which is to return it to the wilderness that it is. So in looking at what a human is, we just turned it back into the wilderness, didn't we? We suddenly went, wow, I don't know what this is. I don't know who I am. I don't know how this comes into being. What a fabulous gift, because then we have to recognize what's there. Recognize, we know it. We will not recognize what we already know because we've placed it in the appropriate boxes inside in our conceptual spaces of knowing. I want to go into what improvisation can be on these levels, especially on the biological level that Levin points out, because I'm doing this reading so I can bring it to you in a sense, and so that I can bring it into what we understand about the work of dancers, what dancers can be and are. And to me, the fact that dancers, and I mean improvising dancers, I mean people who practice that discovery of an action that then appears in a new context and figures out how are we in relations with the world. We're not isolated individual beings, but we are moving in relations continually. So getting back into my notes, I want to take you back to Levin and talk about Levin saying that process philosophy, what philosophers have done when we start to think about what a self is, the fact that we have to change, and that in changing we become something new. We don't remain the same self. That self is constantly in flux, has led process philosophers to say, oh, well, the self is a process. It's not a thing. And, you know, that works for me. Okay. But, but then there's the concept that there is no self, that we are so profoundly entangled with our environment that in fact, anything that's changing, we can say there's no self. Look at Thich Nhat Hanh saying there is no self there. There's no human there. There's no self there. Because everything that composes self is actually of some other order. And then defending the notion of the static self doesn't work because everything changes in ways that cannot be anticipated. And those are the words of Levin. Levin says that our essential nature is that we are a hierarchy of essentially vulnerable agents or being. I would call them beings, he calls them agents, who must interpret the actions of our own parts and information structures. So what we know, our parts and what we know about what's happening, despite their being prone to error, decay, and autonomous behaviors, which means our parts are going to do things on their own, making their own decisions. They're not subject to our requirements. Right? Such a bitch. We can say, such a bitch. There is no control here. We're in the wilderness. Which is really fun. Actually, it leads life to be this endless unfolding of what we don't expect. This is not a limitation of life, but is the origin of life's most unique aspects and of intelligence specifically. This is Levin speaking. he is provisionally calling it mnemonic improvisation. Mnemonics are the devices we do when we want to remember something. We give it a mnemonic, we give it a sound or something that sounds like that will remind us of what it is we want to think of. So if I want to think of Caitlin, I might think cats, so that I'll go to CAT to get there. But I'll go Caitlin there, and I've got Caitlin, I figure out who Caitlin is. And then I might use cats for something else altogether as well. So mnemonic improvisation is what he's looking at. The dynamic ability to rewrite or remap information onto new substrates, new environments, and new contexts, which occur at many scales: behavioral scales, genetic scales, and physiological memories. Those memories that are physiological. I love that. Thinking, what would a physiological memory be? What does it feel like? Is a physiological, looking at a physiological memory, perhaps, or a pattern of being, a pattern of action, something that works once this way. I would have to really, I have to say, I don't really know what Levin means when he says physiological memories. I would love to know. I'm making it up when I explain that. I'm explaining it the way Nita explains it to herself. Okay, just so you know. You might want to look that up and think about it. Evolution makes problem-solving agents, not solutions. So basically what Levin's saying there is that you are a problem-solving agent, but so are the tiny little cells that compose you. Their job is to problem solve. Problem solving is improvising. It's figuring, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? What's this do when I do that? What's this do? I've got to be there to know what it's doing. If I'm not there, I maybe don't know what's happening. Thus, we practice improvisation. How do you be present as things are unfolding, as the doing is happening so much and so absolutely present that you are in the experience of the thing itself, so you know what's changing. And the self that is experiencing it, what's the scale of the self that you are now? It's total fun. Yeah, I love that stuff. So I'm babbling and babbling. I'm going to go on for another 5 minutes, and then we're going to crack this baby open. Let me finish with Levin here. Self is a construct. All models are perspectives created and maintained in time. And it is a pattern that facilitates its own transformation. While bodies change over time, thought forms remain and survive. That commit to interpreting them in new ways for sense making. We commit to interpreting thoughts and reinterpreting them in new ways constantly. William James, thoughts are thinkers. Levin has really investigated James and found a lot present in James's work. So just wanted you to know. It's not my work, it's his. One of the things that I think is important here is that our nature is that thing within a thing within a thing within a thing within a thing. And he calls it a hierarchy, but it's not a hierarchy in the sense that there is top-down control. There's actually bottom-up emergence in this hierarchy that he's talking about. And it makes me think of the notion of holons. And I'm blanking on the author, the writer whose name is on the tip of my tongue, who came up with the notion of holons, which is the thing within the thing within the thing. But what's fascinating to me right now is thinking about what is it that we're actually doing. And Levin says, there's a core truth. While the details of minds and bodies change, thought forms remain and survive because they move across architectures that commit to interpreting them in new ways. What a thought. What a way of understanding. So when as dancers, we stop this notion that the point of dancing is to lose your mind, but really to understand that what we're doing is we're gaining this massive capacity for many forms of thought, of thinking, not just linear thinking. So that dancing, which excites me, is that dancing which becomes progressively more and more intelligent because there's more and more levels and scales of thought, of thinking, and they're not going to be in words. Word thinking is great. We're doing it right now, but it's slow. It's chunky. It's not fast the way dancer thinking is. It's linear. It's not dimensional. Dancer thinking is dimensional. Anyway, so much fun in this. I feel as though I need to stop talking and open it up and let us all talk. What's this mean to you? What's this do to you? When you think dancing, what's it do to think of this, these sentient selves that are this wilderness that is right there? What is it about the wilderness? That which we cannot, that is present, that is making choices, that that results in emergence. Things appear that we don't anticipate. It's wide open for everyone. Anybody can talk. Anybody can just kind of surmise. You don't have to be right here. We're all just playing. This is the playground.
Uh, I'm looking for, I have a couple of things. One, you said physiological memory. And to me, that's like a really ordinary thing. That's like a stubbed toe, a stomach ache, the delight at meeting an old friend.
Yeah.
That's that's what it that's what it is. And it's really enormous. That's really what we value in life. It
It is, isn't it?
is actually life because it's memory and recall and it's everything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really amazing.
And it's so much where we go with dance.
Yeah. And you quoted you were talking about Thich Nhat Hanh and about paper is not paper. It's all these other things.
Uh-huh.
I maybe nobody reads him anymore. That would be okay, I guess. But I met this idea when I was in the George Gurdjieff work years
Oh,
and years.
cool. Cool, cool. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not really a new idea because
Mhm.
sure Gurdjieff got it from somebody else. Um, but it's
I'm
a
sure.
really enormously beautiful and it's wonderful, wonderful uh idea, which I mostly forget, but once in a while remember.
Well, it's Buddhist, and Thich Nhat Hanh says that the notion of emptiness, that is the basis of the notion of emptiness. Where you are, there is nothing. There is not you. So the whole, hi guys, I wanted to welcome you. Well, welcome. I just did a talk. You're coming in a little bit late. So we're now in a conversation about the talk, just so that you know. And the talk is basically, if I were to put it into a nutshell, the nutshell is the wilderness is exactly where you are, because where you are, there is no you. I mean, you're composed of a multiplicity of sentient beings that are all improvising. And that this practice that we do as dancers of improvising is really an extraordinary practice, because it informs us on so many levels. So
One last thing. How do you spell holons?
Holon is HOL.
Oh, HOLONS?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
If I do a quick search, actually, Leanne, would you help me out and do a quick search? I want the name of the guy who it's not coming. He is somebody who is so brilliant, but his work has not gone anywhere because academia fought him. So a holon is something that is simultaneously a whole, complete in and of itself, as well as a part of a larger whole. And I may be wrong, because they're saying it's Kostler who came up with that, keeps referencing Kostler, and I'm not seeing the writer that I'm used to who presented the idea of holon. Anyway, okay, I'm not getting to it, guys. So you'll have to do your own research.
Hello, Nita.
Hi.
So yeah, sorry I'm late. Sorry we're late. You know, schedule with the baby is another time zone.
Yes, it is. That's
So
the wilderness right there.
yeah, that's it. The wilderness right here. Um, yeah, I was here last month in the last Breaking Bread, and I sense that the topic was similar. You were talking about wilderness, wild, how was it? Wilderness or wildness and control. I think that was the
Right,
topic.
right.
So I sense yes, Rebecca was just with us a couple of days ago.
Ah, cool.
So I sense what you're saying, and I do feel I've experienced it with my body while dancing, and I'm always curious on, for example, as a facilitator, uh, how can we invite people to directly experience what you're talking about? You know, to make a bridge between the intellectual understanding and the embodied understanding. And I wonder if you have certain
Excitement excitement happens when you're on the edge of the wilderness. Fear happens when you're at the edge of the wilderness. Uncertainty can happen at the wilderness. So those feelings are clues. Bodily states, sorry, bodily states are this sense of awakening and becoming a kind of having a sense of vigilance when you're at the wilderness. This sense of a need to know. When we're dancing, I'm thinking dance, of course, now. And it is the belief that the important thing for you as a human being to do is to know yourself. is the notion that there's a static self, which there isn't. So this emphasis to be who you are and to be predictable. And people ask that of you, show up the same way all the time. Right? You've experienced this? And the fact that that feels like, self-control. That's self-control. And in improvising, that self-control does not invite the possibility of holding yourself lightly, the way we would hold a baby bird who's about to fly. The baby bird who's about to fly, you're supporting the present moment, feeling the presence of the next moment, of the moment of going elsewhere, of being someone new, of not being the same. Why? Because you are easily moved. The world is present right there. The wilderness of change is right there. That which you do not yet know is right present with you. How do you hold yourself lightly? Rather than fix yourself, make sure you show up the same every time. Now, we want both. It's not that we want to get rid of our ability to have control. Oh my God, we need control. We need a capacity to do both. And so that we have freedom to be appropriate in each moment, because it is the capacity for change that allows us to be in relations. Relations don't happen where there is no change, right? Does that sound right? I mean, I'm just saying those words, and so I haven't really investigated them, but it seems right now. I often say things that I really have to then later really investigate. The other day, I said before a whole group of people, oh God, Nita, you did this, really, you did. I hold myself kind of lightly sometimes too lightly. But I said, bodies don't lie. And I actually think bodies don't lie. I've been investigating that over the last few days, because Joe Dumas said, I don't know about that, Nita. And so when Joe says, I don't know, I have to do a triple take. And what I would say is, the mind that is a body can coerce the body into lying, but it takes coercion, because on its own, the body's not going to lie. It's actually doing what it's doing. In other words, capacity for coercion, to coerce the body into lying. It's an important capacity. But it's you're getting flowers and love from Rebecca, you guys. The capacity to lie in societies for everything that you think and feel, to not be what everybody has to deal with. Those are capacities that allow societies to work. Yeah. So how we go about training that seems really important as an investigation of improvisation. If we were to really think of the improvisation that is present in that training, I think it would be really important to know and to understand. So understanding relations as improvisation. Okay. Anybody else? I've been doing all the talking.
something to share. Uh, I feel like when I think of dancing, I feel like I'm moved by a different kind of knowing. It's more of a sensorial, somatic knowing than other kind of processes. And I'm very curious, like how we can move this kind of knowing while we are like engaging in the way of doing that and not dancing as well. Like how do we have that state of dancing while we are engaging with other activities?
Mm.
And I'm especially think because you mentioned words is like more linear and less dimensional. It is a way to have that sensorial attention almost in that practice as well.
Yeah, yeah. As you say that, when I think words, Jara, I think words are incredibly dimensional because they're constantly dropping us into all of these other dimensions of meaning.
And I'm also thinking about before I jumped into the dance, I used to study interactive media, and there's a lot of coding and programming stuff, which feels a very top-down ways of thinking. And just now, like I occasionally dip into technology a little bit and to like put it side by side with the somatic experience. And I'm wondering, like, what does it feel like to like can I program in a way that it moved by the sensorial experience? And one thing I was thinking about is like usually like when programmers when they do things, they want to debug things all the time. And
They want to what?
they want to debug, like
Debug.
And I'm also always curious, what if can I just dance with the bug, or can I like can I improvise with the glitches in the system instead of have to fix the thing? And
Oh, I love that.
dance like that.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I do agree. I think the notion of perfection is a problem. As a perfectionist, the perfectionist that I am loves imperfection. I love performance when it's imperfect. Which doesn't mean I love high levels of skill that are trying something that is just a little bit beyond the reach, or it's in that realm of is this possible? So that awakening that happens, whether it's a creative awakening or a creative awakening or a technical physical awakening, it's still just woof, it's fascinating to me. I love it. So that then when that happens, you're going to have oops, a step too far, a step too short, a bug, something that shows up from outside that you didn't anticipate, and engage a relationship. It's so beautiful, right? Does anyone else have a oh, Jara, please read Ways of Being by Bridle, James Bridle. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else got a last comment? We've got 5 minutes. And I have to move my car at 10, so I'm going to leave shortly after.
I was thinking about what Rebecca has been doing during the whole thing. She's been driving.
Okay.
And that is, we all drive and we take it for granted. But when you really look at it, it's absolutely amazing because we have to obey rules and the way our car is organized. And then there's improvisation.
Right.
And that goes, I mean, the sun's coming in my eyes. I can't see. What do I do? A car is coming and I don't want to touch it. It's an absolutely incredible experience if you begin to think about it, but not while you're driving.
Right. I love that. And understanding that where the scores are. What's the score that's organizing this improvisation?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the road in that sense is the score. The stop sign is a score. The lights are scored. It's score upon score upon score that allows us to drive at 70 miles an hour for those of us that do or 120. I guess, yeah, I drive a lot when I'm in Europe at 120. So kilometers per hour. Yeah, it's noticing the improv, noticing very much that the improv is trying to take care of the wilderness, really recognizing where the wilderness is, becoming vulnerable and available to the wilderness so that you figure out the relations you're creating with that wilderness, playing with the wilderness, finding where can you be at play so that you don't reject the wilderness and constantly try to fix it or stabilize it, especially that wilderness that is you. Respect for all levels of being, respect for all levels of being, and the scale of all levels of being. Okay, that's the message, if there is one. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
I turn it over to
Sorry. Sorry, Nita, I didn't mean to keep cutting you off. This has been Breaking Bread with Nita Little, a digital series offered for free, usually at the end of each month. We won't be back next month at the end of November, but we will be in December, so tune in then. And as usual, for more information on upcoming events, classes, and offerings, including Nita's Australian tour in January and February, and her 2025 spring and summer events in Europe, head over to Nita's website, nitalittle.com. And we hope to see you again in December.
And may I just tag on here? The request that you can write us with topics that you are interested in that we discuss together. That I look into and then speak to and we discuss. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Oh, good
Bye.
night,
Oh
Brad.
God, that's beautiful.